Hi, this is Dweezil Zappa, and you're listening to Retrospectives with John Broughton on KC Radio 97.7 FM.
Okay, so you're touring here with the 50th anniversary of Hot Rats, and I guess that's an album that holds a particularly special place for you amongst your dad's albums, considering he dedicated it to you at the time and it was released shortly after you were born.
It's always been a special record, not only for me, but for the fans. I think there's something unique about the feel and the overall sound landscape, for this record. Songs like Peaches on Regalia and Son of Mr. Green Jeans and It Must Be a Camel, they have such a unique kind of instrumentation to them, and the recording is it's just so evocative of a particular era. It just has new horizons in music and technology and all that stuff all happening, in that one instance. And it's, I think it's just hard to describe why people seem to have such a good feeling about the record. And when we actually are playing it live, even before we started playing it, I was always wondering about this record because it's largely instrumental, and, are people really going to want to, hear this record live on stage? Do people have the capacity these days to, focus on that in that way? And I think, for the people that this record, this record really matters for, they really enjoy every aspect of it, and bringing it to the stage live has been a rewarding experience for us and for the fans. We've been doing it for a while now, and it's gone over very well the whole time.
So, taking on reproducing a work like that on stage, for yourself personally, how stringent is your attention to detail? Do you try and replicate it as closely as possible, or do you allow yourself a little bit of artistic license to put your own spin on it?
Well, I think it's a combination, and my dad, he had different ways of going about playing his own music live on stage. So, for example, there would never have been a time where he would have decided to try to recreate an album exactly note for note, or try to recreate every single texture from the record, because that wasn't of concern to him. He actually was more interested in, all right, what instrumentation do I have in this particular band, and what can I make this band do while I'm on tour? And, so I actually look at it a little bit differently, because knowing that the record has never been performed live in its entirety like that by him, where he would have tried to recreate everything very, very specifically, I looked at it as, all right, some songs are so classic as they are on the record, there should be no reason to change it. So for example, Peaches on Regalia, we do our best to recreate the textures and timbres of that exact arrangement. We do the same for Son of Mr. Green Jeans, and in that case, that required me to learn the solo that he played note for note, which is like 8 minutes of guitar soloing that he improvised, that is so classic and perfect for that song, that I felt like, there's no reason to try to change any of it to make it something else. So then it wouldn't be that version of Son of Mr. Green Jeans. But by the same token, a song like Willie the Pimp, which also has an improvisational solo in it, that one I leave as a completely open improvisational sounding solo, but I use a guitar sound that's very similar to what's on the record, so that whatever I play sounds like it's in context to the record. And so that's usually my approach, is if I'm going to improvise, I want to at least improvise with a sound that sounds very much like the record.
Looking back, can you pinpoint a moment in time when you were growing up that you became truly aware of the status your dad had in the world of music?
I don't think we ever really had any indication of, status type of things, because it just was always a normal notion that, my dad played music and he played in front of people. And so that just seemed like a normal thing, because that's what we knew about. But there wasn't ever a thing when I was in school where people were like, oh, I really got to meet your dad or some stuff like that, because the kids that were my age were much younger than what would have been his typical fan base. So it wasn't a situation like that where you grow up where people are like, oh, I want to be friends with that kid because, his dad's famous. Like, kids in my class didn't know anything about that,
Yeah.
So I think we were pretty well shielded from all of that.
Is it true that up until about the age of 12, it was your dad's music was pretty much the only music you heard?
Yeah. Well, I didn't really, I was into sports and things as a kid growing up, and I heard music in the house, whatever my dad was writing or making or listening to. But then when I was 12, I started to hear other music because friends of mine were listening to stuff, or I might pay attention to it on the radio, and so that's when I got exposed to other things. But at that time, it was kind of funny because it was like I would hear things and think to myself, where are the other instruments? Where's the rest of everything? Because it felt so empty compared to what my dad was doing.
Yeah, yeah. Was there ever going to be another career path for you, or was music always going to be the way to go?
Well, I was interested in lots of things growing up. I mean, I remember being really fascinated by all the Jacques Cousteau documentaries and things, and being interested in, what was underneath the water. But when I saw the movie Jaws, that pretty much ruined that for me. And then I was really into baseball growing up, but at the time that I heard Van Halen and some other rock things that were very guitar-centric, that's when my ideas about music became more serious. So when I was about 12, that's when I was like, okay, wait a minute, this seems like something I'm really into.
Yeah. You did do a bit of acting work back in the day. Was that a career option for you?
Well, I did a little bit of that over the years, so that was something. But I've always, sidetracked into areas of interest. I've had different TV shows. I've done music for TV shows and a little film music here or there. So at one point, I was really interested in trying to do a lot of film scoring, which is still something I'd be interested in doing. But then I got into doing the whole touring and playing my dad's music, which is not something I ever really expected I would do. So, it was just kind of whatever felt like the thing that was keeping me the most interested and inspired was, the path that I would follow.
Yeah. I guess there would always be the cynical type of person out there who would love to criticize someone like you for honoring your dad's music in this way, probably accusing you of cashing in on his work, that type of thing. Was there any point in time where you even had to convince yourself that it was okay to do this?
Well, that kind of thing is easy for people to do, the armchair critic and all that kind of stuff. But I just looked at it as if I'm doing something that is easily comparable, as an apples to apples comparison, and the work speaks for itself, so I don't have to do any explaining, then that's really the end of the day. That's what I set out to do. So I just really wanted to do something that was allowing people to get a better and broader experience with my dad's music because, long story short, his music, whatever got on the radio, was not the most representative of the rest of his work. So I felt like when he passed away, he was being relegated to the novelty act bin, and I thought that was not, I thought that could be improved. So the way to do it was to expose people to his music on stage, and that's what I chose to do. And I just, like I said, let the music speak for itself. And so 15 years later, there's still an audience checking out what I'm doing, and a lot of it has come down to the point where people like the versions that I'm doing with my own band, and they're coming to see that specifically, not necessarily to hear Frank Zappa music, but to hear this version of Frank Zappa music.
Yeah. I once spoke to the late Jimmy Carl Black from Mothers of Invention, and he said the main thing that stood out for him working with your dad was his perfectionism and his incredible work ethic. Was that something he instilled in you too?
Yes, to a degree, for sure. I mean, the level of skill required to play this music is top notch, and you can't just like fake your way through it. So a lot of time and effort goes into it. But at the same time, I probably am more of a person that would be a little bit more open to, okay, let's have some different ways to put this together. Like my dad had to do everything all himself because he had all the ideas of how he wanted to do it. But there's so much to go through and so much to choose from that, I don't mind having some input from some of the people that I'm close with in this project. I have the final say on everything, but I do have some input from others, and whereas I don't think my dad really had that.
Are there any works in your dad's catalogue of work that up until this stage you've been reluctant to try and take on?
The things that are the things that I'd like to be able to do that we haven't done would require a ton of rehearsal, and I don't know that we would ever have the opportunity to properly be able to do it. Something like Gregory Peccary or some bigger orchestral pieces that could take weeks or months just for one thing to really get it right. That's the kind of thing where it's difficult to try to prepare for something like that because it really means only spending money to prepare, and you wouldn't get that money back, and that's not easy to do. So we try to keep things in the range of what we can do, and then do it in a cost-effective way, and then get out there on tour.
How about finding other musicians to work with on playing Frank's music? Has there been any specific criteria you've worked to there to find the right type of musician?
Well, I think there are probably a fair amount of people around the world that would have the talent required to play a lot of this stuff, but it becomes a smaller percentage of people that would have the right attitude to stay within the right lane and do only the parts that they're supposed to do. What happens is a lot of people try to change parts and make it, be a different thing than what it is. And that's the stuff my dad had problems with too, is that when he had people that would, try to change the written parts and do their own thing with it, he did not like that. So that's the thing, is when you have to have the right combination of people who have the right skill, but also understand that everything has a specific place and a reason to be there, and that's your job. You know, if you don't like that, then this is not the job for you. You know, so. But yeah, that, you know, that also means somebody that can work with others and live in tight spaces on tour buses and all that stuff. So that, you know, you're really talking about a real small handful of people that are worth being able to, you know, put that time in with, and it cycles in and out. Sometimes you have to, you know, get new people after every couple tours or something, but it is it's not an easy job, you know. So
what about a detailed prior knowledge of his music? Has that been an essential requirement?
That actually is not as much of an essential requirement as one would think. It's more about, you know, does somebody have the reading skills, the playing skills, the retention skills, and then almost more importantly, like I said, is the ability to get along with people and be a good cooperative team member.
Now, I don't want to dwell on this too much, as I'm sure you don't, but how do you think your dad would feel about you having a cease and desist order placed upon you from playing under the Zappa Plays Zappa moniker?
Oh, I think he would have thought that was absolutely pathetic. And, you know, anybody that was paying attention, you know, would be thinking, like, who would do such a thing? What would be the reason why, you know, a family member would block somebody and, you know, try to say, oh, we just don't, you know, want people to be confused that, you know, people think you're, you know, if you use this name, people think you're Frank Zappa or something. So that part of the stuff that was the argument that was being thrown in this situation was that the ZFT was trying to block me from using my own last name. At some point, they started to say they owned my first name as well. And so, you know, at the end of the day, I ended up using my own name as an artist for touring, and the ZFT now has their own version of a touring Zappa band that they simply call the Zappa Band, and they have no Zappa in the band.
Oh, goodness.
But yeah, but they try to go out at competing times, and the whole point before was to say that, well, we have Frank Zappa going back out on tour as a hologram, and we don't want people to be confused. Yet, you know, the hologram didn't do well, and now they have the Zappa band. So there's a lot of things going on. If you look at it, like all the things that are happening now, they were prepping that stuff back then.
Goodness. And playing Frank's music on stage, it must be a wonderful experience for you, but I guess it would be even more wonderful if you were able to use some of his old guitars, which I believe that's not possible either.
Yeah, that became, you know, a problem as well. But, you know, we can see how it all turned out, so, you know, whatever.
Having studied your dad's music quite intensely as you have through the years, are there any things that you would love to ask him about his work if he was still here with us?
Well, you know, the thing about his music that is always fascinating to me and that I've always been amazed at when I started learning it is that if you really try to simplify the essence of what at least Western music is, there's 12 musical tones that you can use, and you can put them in whatever order you want and whatever rhythm. But if you think of, okay, you know, those 12 tones and how you use them, if you listen to all of my dad's records, the way that he used those 12 tones is so drastically different from song to song, from album to album, and like the sheer creativity of having the ability to rearrange those things the way that he did is what blows my mind, because there's no template to it. There's no like, okay, well, I wrote a song like Peaches on Regalia. I'm going to write 2 or 3 different versions of something like that, similar way, whatever. He doesn't do anything like that. So everything starts from a blank page, and it becomes a totally unique thing. And that's the part that's amazing, is that he didn't have some type of a template system of how his music was created, and that's just amazing.
As the person who is probably more than anyone keeping the music of Frank Zappa alive and introducing it to new audiences as well, if you were to sit down with someone totally uninitiated in Frank's music and point them to a good starting point, where would you point them?
Well, oftentimes I tell people that, you know, there's a few gateway records. Like Apostrophe is probably one of the easiest records for somebody to kind of get an overall idea of what my dad did in his music. Mm-hmm. It has a bit of everything. You know, it's got a bit of every style. It's got some comedy. It's got, you know, some intense musical passages. It's a great sounding album. It's great feel. You know, it's got rock, jazz. It's got gospel. It's got a little bit of everything. But that is, I think, overall, it gives you a sense of the adventure that you can have within the music. But once you get an idea of that, you may want to start looking at other records and possibly going back to the first record, Freak Out, and see, okay, wait a minute. In 10 years, he went from Freak Out to, you know, say Apostrophe, and see the huge difference. And then you start to see from record to record that it's growing in leaps and bounds every time. So you can see that there's a pattern of change, of growth as a composer. And, you know, I think it's always a challenge to find what really matches with people, but Apostrophe is usually a good one. Hot Rats is a good one. Joe's Garage and Shake Your Booty are also, you know, fan favorite ones. But I think it's just tough, you know, because there's so much to choose from. If you wanted to just hear his classical music, I think one of the ones I'd recommend was The Yellow Shark.
Yep. Another area that you've been very active in is online guitar tuition videos. Do they become a learning experience for yourself sometimes doing those?
I really like always learning something new on guitar, and I think when you're trying to teach something, you know, you also have to have the mind of a student in mind when you're putting together how you're trying to present material for people to digest. And so I'm a constant student of the guitar, so I'm always interested in checking out new things, different things, and when I come across new players, oftentimes I'll just reach out to them directly. You know, these days you can kind of get in touch with people fairly easily and fairly quickly through certain social media situations, and so, you know, it's, for me, it's something that it's an ongoing thing that I like to keep improving, and you know, and I like being able to learn and teach things.
Talking about your upcoming shows, what's the structure of the show? Do you jump straight into Hot Rats, or is it sort of in the middle of the show with a few other bits of material either side? How does it actually work?
Well, we often have an opening song that then kind of sets up a feel for the show. Lately, it's been a specific version of Don't Eat the Yellow Snow that has some different things than the album version, and I use that to kind of set the feel of the evening and have some fun, and then we jump right into Hot Rats. But I don't know, by the time we get to Australia, we might be playing a different opening piece. But yeah, we then usually play all of Hot Rats and then play another hour or so more of other music after that.
And the lineup of your band, pretty much the same lineup as your last visit down here?
It's a little different. We have a lead singer that's different and a keyboard player that's different. So otherwise, it's pretty much the same.
Wonderful. And just before I let you go, Dweezil, what else is in the works for you up after you leave us here in Australia?
I'm hoping to be able to do some more of my own music that I can get out there, including finishing working on this record that I started a long time ago that's called What the Hell Was I Thinking? And it has all these different guitar players on it, including Angus and Malcolm Young. Mm-hmm. And it's something that hopefully by either the end of this year or sometime mid next year, I'll be able to have a version of this thing finally come out, because I've been working on it for 20 plus years.
Fantastic. Hey, Dweezil, thanks so much for your time. Great to catch up with you. We're looking forward to seeing you down here again. You're always welcome down here. I can guarantee you'll never receive a cease and desist order from Australia. We just love having you here.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Good on you. We'll see you in a few weeks. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Cheers.